Hey everybody. Let me see if I am muted. I am not muted. I think I'm good to go. All right. Hey everybody. Thanks for joining us today. It's Thursday of our TF Live Week. Today we're going to have Diana Martinez join us today. She's the founder and CEO of DLM Creative Consulting. She's the former president of Chicago's legendary Second City. She actually came out and spent the day with us here at TicketForce and our staff, and we just had so much fun. Of course, we wanted her to come back. If you have any questions or anything like that at all, there is a question panel right there in the GoToMeeting. Feel free to ask those at any time. We'll go over them at the end, and I can kind of monitor those throughout Diana's time. So just go ahead and feel free to enter those in at any time. There's also a chat little section there too, so if Diana asks any questions or if you need to chat with us, you can also use that panel as well. I'm going to go ahead and hand things over to Diana. Diana.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm going to go ahead and make you the presenter now too. You ready?
I'm ready. Let's do this.
All right.
So now I bet you're all saying, okay. Are you good?
Yep, we're good.
All right. Well, welcome everybody, and thank you for coming. Our goal today, my goal today, is to try to inspire you to think a little more creatively and collaboratively. I hope to make you a little more aware of how you communicate when you're trying to be collaborative, and inspire you to engage and collaborate toward innovative solutions. So let's get started. So what do I know? I know you just learned a little bit about where I last worked. When I do have a background with over 25 years of entertainment experience in executive management. I directed and produced Broadway musicals in the Chicago area, and I did that for 13 years. And while I was doing that, I worked for Kenny Rogers and helped him put his holiday show together over 7 seasons in 10 years. And then from there, I went to the Paramount Theater in Aurora, which is a beautiful 1,888 seat theater. And when I left Paramount or went to Paramount, I went there begrudgingly. And at first I thought, I don't want to give up directing, and I don't want to give up doing what I absolutely love and what I know. And when they made me an offer I couldn't refuse, I thought, well, maybe I will love it. And I said, yes, I'll try this, and I'm going to try it for a couple of years and we'll see what happens. And that yes led me to a whole new chapter in my career and learning how to run a nonprofit organization coming from a commercial organization. And that yes led me to a whole new world of presenting theater and working with agents and working with touring artists and how that whole end of our business works. And it was an amazing experience. I was there for 8 years and presented about 350 shows, everything from Michael Bublé to every bus and truck tour that you probably have at your theater. And then I was asked if I would serve on the League of Chicago Theaters board, and I did. And it was a lot of fun. And I was at one of the annual events, and I was sitting next to Andrew Alexander, who's the owner of Second City. And this annual event went on and on and on. It was honestly like 4 hours long, maybe the longest event I'd ever been to. And we were both just looking at each other like, what is going on with this? We are the League of Chicago Theaters. It should be the most entertaining, fun event, and this is a dirge. And we went to the board meeting, and we were like, look, we were ready to do the army crawl out of there and slice our wrists with our playbill. Please, we've got to do something. And they said, well, you're so smart, you run the next event. So we said, all right, we'll do it. And we said yes. And that yes that Andrew and I made developed a relationship that who would have thought we would be producing this big, huge gala together for 250 theaters in Chicago. And because Andrew had so many connections, he had Harold Ramis at the time host the event, and we had a lot of fun comedians, and it was a really wonderful, wonderful experience working with him. And over the years, we kept a great collegial relationship. And then he was planning his 50th anniversary for Second City, and he invited me to help him. He's like, will you help me do my 50th? And as we got to talking about this, and I said, yes, I will do this. But then we both realized this was a job. This was a full-time job trying to coordinate 2,000 entertainers from all across the country. And here are some of the people who were there. Everyone from Alan Arkin and Robert Klein and Peter Boyle and Jim Belushi to Martin Short, Catherine O'Hara, Nia Vardolis, and all the way down to Stephen Carell, Stephen Colbert, and all of the wonderful artists that Second City has put together. That, yes, led to a full-time job with Second City as Director of Operations and Management, and then, and Marketing, I'm sorry. And after a few months, he said, you know, I want you to run the company. And I guess my moral of my story here for you is how a yes in your life can open the door to something new. While I was there at Second City, and I started seeing the product and seeing the talent, and at first you're like, they're like magicians. How can they think so fast? How can they do what they do so quickly and think on their feet, and they're just amazingly talented. But after I got there, I was like, I want to see how they put these shows together. I want to understand this process. And it was there that I understood and learned how valuable the lessons of improvisation are. And I also learned that a lot of these fundamentals apply to business, and I learned that these fundamentals can be taught. And I learned them while I went through the entire training program and the directing program. And I was so amazed by what you get from it. And I felt like the fundamentals of improvisation are like core strengthening for creativity, for collaboration, and for communication. And it made me really realize that when your creativity is left idle and you're not stretching those muscles, they atrophy. But it is a muscle, and you can stretch it, and you can work it. And not only can you stretch your creativity, but you can stretch and improve your ability to be aware of how you collaborate, how you communicate, and you can help your innovation tremendously when you think like a professional improviser. And some of the skills that I noticed that these improvisers were amazing at was listening, communication. Their confidence is just overwhelming. They can stand up on a stage and get suggestions thrown out from an audience and have the confidence to just take it and run. They have the ability to adapt and turn on a dime. They take risks. And the sense of ensemble and teamwork and leadership is tremendous in that environment. And also, improvisation really improves trust and relationships. The culture is very deep, not only at Second City, but if you look at I.O. or UCB or Upright Citizens Brigade, any of those organizations, and there's many others, have the same founding principles. They all started from Second City, and they have a real strong sense of innovation. They are constantly creating new content on a daily basis. So before I go any further, I want to ask if there are several people, and Amy, if you can help me, I want to understand how many people understand how Second City shows work before I go on, because I don't want to assume you know. And so if some people could chat and let us know Are you aware of Second City? Do you understand improv? Do you want me to explain a little bit more how a show like that works?
I'll go ahead and monitor the chat for you too as well.
Okay. I'm going to move on to one more slide. You know, why do business people have to think creatively or improvisationally? Well, if you ask me, on a daily basis, we're spinning plates. And for those of us who've ever worked in a box office situation, and I started in a box office in college, that was my college job, you know, you're just trying to keep all the plates in the air and keep the customers happy and print tickets and deal with problems. And in any business you're in, you're constantly spinning plates. So the ability to be more agile in your thinking and the ability to think on your feet and the ability to work collaboratively really applies to all areas. So do we have any response yet on how many people understand how a show's put together?
It's going to be pretty much more being unfamiliar than familiar.
Unfamiliar.
So, yes.
Okay. I'm going to sneak back over here. How improvisational shows work, how a sketch comedy show works at Second City is it's very much like Saturday Night Live, the sketches that you see on those shows. Those sketches that you see on Saturday Night Live are based on improvisation and collaborative writing. But all and most of the people you've ever seen on Saturday Night Live came from an improvisational sketch theater background. One of the other ones I mentioned, Second City, UCB, Improv, Olympics, Upright Citizens Brigade, the Groundlings in LA. But all of them harken back to Second City. Second City is the granddaddy of them all. It's the first improvisational theater in Chicago. And how a Second City show is put together is they have a series of sketches, like let's imagine a Saturday Night Live show. We'll use that as an example. They'll take out a sketch that is the most irrelevant. And at the end of the show, they'll say to the audience, we're done with our show. We hope you've had a great time. Would you like to see a little bit more? And the audience always says yes. And they say, get a drink, come back, and we're going to do a little improv for you. And what they do at that point is they say, what's on your mind right now politically? And of course, right now, probably people would yell out Trump. And they'll say, okay. And what's on your mind sports-wise? And people might say the World Series. And they'll say, okay, we're going to do a scene where Trump is playing against Hillary's team in the World Series. And we're going to recreate that last World Series game with these two coaches of their teams, and they start making the scene, and it's very funny, and Bernie Sanders is the umpire, and he comes in, and the audience really likes it, and they're really getting a kick out of how this is going. So the next day, they'll take that scene, they'll bring it to rehearsal, and they'll clean it up. They'll say it was funny here, it was not funny there. They have a tape, they'll watch it. Let's add in another character, and so on and so forth. And they tighten it up, and then they put it in the show the next night. They take out the most irrelevant scene. Let's say there was a scene about the parking prices in Chicago and Rahm Emanuel. And they'll take that out, and they'll plug in this World Series Trump and Hillary scene. And the audience is really getting a kick out of it, and they relate to it, and they like it. And so over the series of 10 weeks or so, they will create a new show. So in essence, the show is created with the audience. And what makes the shows at Second City so likable is that they are co-creating with the audience. They're not only collaborating with each other, but they're collaborating with the audience. So the end user has really given us insight as to what they're interested in, and then we also see how they like how we've delivered. And they get 10 weeks to rehearse it in front of a live audience and see if it holds and see if it plays. If it doesn't, they'll put in a stronger scene. But they keep playing this plug and play night after night where they take out the weaker scenes, put in the stronger scenes. At the end of 10 weeks, they have this incredible show. The critics come, and they love the show. week after week after week. Second City is wonderful sales. They're usually sold out every weekend, and it's an incredible formula for success. And it really opened my eyes to so many things about business, and why aren't we doing that in other ends of our business? Why aren't we asking our end users and our ticket buyers how they want things delivered and what they're missing? You know, there's an example. We tend to spend tons of time in meetings about how to improve the website, but do we ever have the end user in the room or several end users in the room to help us cut to the chase faster? So that gives you a little bit of background about Second City. You can see many of Second City artists end up on Saturday Night Live. You can see Seth Meyers, and you can see Adie Bryant, and you can see how it has translated to SNL. Many Second City people become writers and directors as well. So what I started realizing when I started putting the pieces together on a more philosophical level is that creativity and collaboration are what generates big transformational ideas. But, you know, they need time to incubate, and they need perspective. And change in business is hard, and new ideas in business are hard. And when you're in improv, you are getting these suggestions from the audience, and you don't have time to contemplate. You just have to innovate, and you have to stay current. And I think in business and on the operational end of theater sometimes, we're a little bit resistant, and we keep doing things in a certain way, and we don't take what we learn from the stage into the business end. And why do we have to be innovative? If you look over time at probably the person who nailed it right from the beginning, Charles Darwin, he said, it's not the strongest species that survive, nor the most intelligent, but the ones who are the most responsive to change. And we have to always keep remembering that. I think sometimes we think that survival of the fittest is the biggest company or the richest company or the best company, but sometimes it's the most nimble companies. And if you look at Blockbuster and Border, they were huge. They were everywhere, but they certainly were not nimble enough to survive Netflix and Amazon. And then on the flip side, you look at business interrupters like Airbnb or Uber, and how brilliant they were, because when you think about Airbnb, they are one of the biggest hotel chains in the country, except they don't have one thing. They don't have a hotel or a hotel room, which is really amazing that that company itself isn't a hotel. Or Uber, they don't have cabs, but when they're one of the biggest, newest transportation companies. So how can we be more innovative in our thinking? How can we be more open-minded to stay relevant? So another reason we have to be adaptable is in 2013, when I really started launching my business and these theories, it was a hot topic. You heard about the word innovation everywhere. It became a really big buzzword in like Fast Company, and you'd hear it in training seminars everywhere, and adaptability. And they did a study of 3,000 CEOs about what their biggest concerns were. And their biggest concerns were being adaptable, number one, and two, having the ability to respond to the complexities of an ever-changing environment, right? It's a spinning plates thing. And as we've become more digital, and as we have become a more global society, things on the West Coast affect the East Coast, and gas prices affect us all, and the digital world affects us all much faster than it used to. And businesses pop up overnight, and blue chip companies fall overnight. And we have to be able to respond to all those changes. And so they were talking about, in my opinion, adaptability, right? They were looking for people who were stronger and their own ability to be adaptable. Then you look at another survey they did of the same CEOs, and they said, what are the new top qualities beyond education and experience that you think CEOs should be looking for? And they said, number one, people who are collaborative, and number two, people who are creative. We need more creative minds in the business world. We need new ideas because things are moving fast, and business is now using really interesting words like chief innovator, right? You didn't see those words 5 years ago. And it's really crept up and become more of the norm that creativity is a quality in an employee. So I want to see if we can do a little bit of a chat here for a minute. I want to ask you where or when your most creative ideas occur. So for me, it's driving in the car. The minute I get in the car and I'm out of my office for a minute and I'm buzzing around, especially toward the end of the day, it feels like I can really put the pieces together of certain things that have been mulling around in my head. And I want to know if you can share in chat what some of yours are, and take a minute to share that with us. So it could be driving, it could be running, it could be whatever your thing is. A lot of people say the shower. And Amy, maybe you could tell us when we're there
Yeah, no worries.
and what some of the answers are, because I don't think I can see them. Oh, actually, maybe I can't. Maybe I can't.
We don't have any yet, so come on, folks.
Can people talk to us, Amy?
No, they are in
Okay.
listen-only mode, but we have some coming in right now.
Here we go.
So the first one we have is when I'm sleeping.
Okay.
We have another one that says while I'm cleaning the house.
Ah.
Yeah. We have another one that says while I'm driving. We had one come in that says at happy hour.
At happy hour, I
Yeah.
believe it.
Next one is while I'm window shopping.
Oh.
Yeah, that's a good one.
All right. Any more?
Not yet, but if any good ones come in, I'll
Okay.
let you know.
So
Oh,
let's talk about, okay.
I have one more. When I should be working on a big project and focused elsewhere.
Okay.
Generally driving or when I'm really relaxed.
Hmm.
And the last one is exercising.
Perfect. So everybody, I believe you all. I believe you all 100%. And I'm going to tell you why. Let's talk about how ideas are formed. Your creativity lies in your subconscious, not in your conscious, believe it or not. And so when you are engaged in your conscious mind throughout the day, and you're answering the phone, and you're dealing with clients, and you're printing tickets, and the ticket printer's jammed, and your online connection might go down, and you're trying to spin the plates, it's very hard for your creativity to engage. In fact, it really doesn't engage because your creativity needs to be in a relaxed, semi-engaged state to work. So ideation happens when you're in a relaxed place, like at happy hour, right? Um, like when you were sleeping. Um, what were some of the other ones we had, Amy?
We had driving, exercising, while I'm window shopping, and then the other one that
Okay.
you missed was when I should be working on a big project and focused somewhere else.
And you're, okay. So, hello? All of those things indicate times when we are in semi-engaged states, right? You're window shopping, you're kind of daydreaming about how you're going to look in that outfit. Um, when you're driving, we should be in an engaged state, but I can't tell you how many times I've driven, looked up and gone, oh my gosh, where the heck am I? Or how the heck did I get here so fast? I don't even remember half this drive, right? Um, when you are in a semi-engaged state, here's what happens. you have a thought, you have a problem you're mulling over in your mind, and it stores in a little synapse and one of these little balls and these little shimmers of light, and then you get distracted and you have to move elsewhere. Then you read about something that might apply to what you've been worrying about or thinking about, and you store that because then again you get distracted and have to do the things you have to do. And when you relax is when the dots can connect, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I had the best idea, right? It's when you can relax, like happy hour. Best ideas happen on the back of a bar napkin. The other thing that happens when you're relaxed is the editor in your head goes away. That self-conscious person that sits on your shoulder and that voice in your head that's like, no, that's not a good idea. That's dumb. Don't, no, it's going to be too expensive. All of that kind of goes away when you're in peace with your thoughts and you're relaxed. And you can really let the dots connect. And so what's interesting very much to me is where our best ideas occur usually are not where we're paid to have our best ideas. So what's the moral of the story? It's good to get away to think, right? How can you take a minute and get outside the office and maybe do some competitor research or go to a trade show or go to a social event or a creative place that stimulates thoughts, or if you're attuned enough to know, like, I need to go for a drive. I know that now. Or I'm going to go work out. Because when I'm in my zone, that's when I can just kind of focus in on what I want to focus in on and daydream a little bit. And that's part of being creative, right? You have to be able to think freely and not have to feel like you have to say what the boss wants to hear. It really helps you to focus on the problem and not just respond, right, to what you think someone might want you to be saying. And there's another way to get at a solution and solve a problem, and it's collaboration. So Kevin Dunbar did a study of scientists, and he studied them for years, and what he came to find was that their best ideas did not occur at the microscope or the computer or the lab. Their best ideas came at the end of the day when they sat around a table sharing the results of their day or their ideas. And what's interesting is he came up with a theory of the best ways to organize this. And one is to establish goals at your first meeting and then retreat and research. Let these people think, let them mull them over, let them research, let them go for a drive, go work out, go have a drink, and then come back and gather and share your ideas and your thoughts on where we need to move and where we need to go in solving the problem. And then he said for best results, you do that second meeting in small groups where people are a little more free to share and a little more comfortable to share. And then the next step is to come back. Is to retreat and research. Again, let them go away after they've met in those small groups. And then once again, come back and build consensus and a plan. So to recap, establish the goal in your first meeting, let them go and retreat and research, come back, gather and share in small groups, let them go away and think on it, and come back and make a plan. Now you can't do that all the time, but when you're working on a big project, he said that is what he found to be the best results-driven plan. So why does collaboration work? Well, you have quicker processing due to a variety of perspective, and diverse thoughts can spark great ideas, increased resources and information, shared risk, shared reward, and more exciting to be a part of something bigger than yourself, right? Common goals and understanding. So when you're sharing ideas, sometimes a crazy idea can spark a really relevant idea. However, you have to be in a safe environment in order to really share ideas. And that's where sometimes in the workplace we get caught up. Sometimes it's not so safe. Collaborators that you know are Albert Einstein. He had a group of two pals, and the three of them would meet in a pub. So for the person who said at happy hour, you're in good company with Albert Einstein. He said they would meet in a pub, and after you have a drink, right, inhibitions come down, and your status is at the same level. And so these three great minds would share ideas. And he said it was after a year of meeting, they would go read books, and then kind of like this book club in a pub with these brilliant scientists would share their ideas and their philosophies on things. Thomas Edison was a great collaborator. His great-great-grandniece wrote The Midnight Lunch, and in his memoirs she found that he would go home for dinner with his family and then come back to the lab, and he would check on his experiments, and also in the lab would be other scientists who were also checking on their experiments. And right next door was a pub, and they would order a pitcher of beer and a plate of sandwiches, and they would discuss their hypotheses and their theories on and how their experiments were going. And he said it was because of those midnight lunches that the light bulb and the telephone and the telegraph came to be. He credits all of that. So now how can we apply it to you? How can you try to bring this collaborative environment into your workplace? And I think if you are a leader, it's your job to set the culture, and it's your role. And you have to not expect creativity to just magically occur. People need to really be nudged in the direction, and you have to set the culture. And what you need is time, uninterrupted time to meet and talk, and time to research and discuss. And you need a space that is inviting where everyone can collaborate. And more importantly, you need to invite people to collaborate. In our society, status is really key. And people who are not at an executive or a management level are not going to run up to you and say, hey, I got this great idea, unless you have this amazing culture. They're inhibited. And I promise you, I've done tons of consulting now. Everybody's like, well, no, I think everybody feels comfortable. And I'll come in and do a session, and lo and behold, there's tons of great ideas that have not been tapped because people were not invited to share, and or people were afraid to speak up. So the last thing that you need, and the most important thing you need, is trust. And although it sounds cliche, without trust and a safe environment to collaborate, it's very difficult to make it happen. And sometimes when you notice, people will bring facilitators in to facilitate meetings and collaborative sort of meetings, because it is a little bit more managed, and sometimes people feel more invited and open to share in an environment like that than they would normally do. The other thing that's your role as a leader in your organization is to create a forum to express your ideas, right? So sometimes we think, oh, we have this great idea box in the lunchroom, or we have people email their ideas in. One way collaboration usually isn't the strongest. It can work in certain environments, but a lot of times people's ideas get put out there, and then they're never responded to. And then people who have submitted those ideas feel shut down. And it doesn't take much for people to just sort of shut down and close down. It usually takes about 2 times of someone saying, hey, I got this idea, and somebody goes, oh yeah, well, we tried that before. Anybody else got any other ideas? And then you just hear crickets after a while, right? Because people feel like ideas really aren't welcome. So if you can tune into a way to build a forum to express ideas, that'd be great. And, you know, office hours or opportunities for people to have one-on-one breakfast with the boss, or 20% time where there's a designated time and space, or a monthly, quarterly forum. Those are just some ideas. So basically, As a leader, you're looking to create time, space, and invitation to participate in a forum, to solicit new ideas. But most importantly, it has to be safe. So let's talk a little bit about the fundamentals of collaborative creativity. Number one, ensemble. These are tenets of improvisation, and we say make your partner look good. When people feel part of an ensemble or a group or a really unified team, there's safety in numbers, right? We succeed together and we fail together. There's no finger pointing. And there's a concept that you are as strong as you can compensate for your weakest member. One of the founders of Second City, Sheldon Patinkin, said that. And if you think about it, it's sort of the strong as your weakest link theory. It's the same principle that we are all in this together, and if one of the links are weak and we break, it doesn't matter. And I like to use the example of the Rockettes. When you see the Rockettes, if one of the dancers is off, people don't say, oh my gosh, the seventh girl from the left is off. What do they say? They say the Rockettes were off tonight. The girls just weren't together. So an ensemble attitude is really about not just making your team look good, but being really concerned about making your partners and each individual member of your team look good. And when you make them look good, they make you look good. And it's definitely the idea that one person can't do it all alone. You cannot improvise by yourself. I'm sure you could, but it's not as interesting. And improvisation, we have a theory of we got your back. And that brings me to trust. There's a lot of trust. You know that when you go out there and you take a suggestion from the audience, your ensemble is not going to leave you hanging. They are going to be there to jump in and create a new character to play off your character and support the scene and build off of it. And I believe that trust is built one interaction at a time. So when you say something snippy to somebody at work, you're breaking trust. When you're short with somebody, when you let them down and you don't give them something you promised them on time, you start to degrade that trust. And it's really important to remember that. And in my seminars, I ask people, who likes to call AT&T? And no one ever raises their hand. We now know that if we call AT&T, we are in a perma loop of press this, dial in that, answer this question, and we get frustrated really quick. And it's kind of interesting because it didn't take us long to lose that trust. After like 2 calls, you got it. So I want to tell you to flip that around and look in the mirror and say, how many times has somebody tried to call you a couple times with no answer or no response? And what do you think their impression of you is? So we don't realize that all these small interactions and now we have to deal with how we communicate on email, all of them build up to our brand and how we are looked at. The next tenet is dare to fail, right? You see a WD-40 can there, and one of our tenets is dare to fail. You fail fast, you fail together, you fail in a safe place, not on Twitter, right? You don't want to put out some crazy tweet on Twitter because you can, now share it with the whole universe, and then it's tough to take back, right? So when you're going to fail, you want to fail in a test environment or in a place where you say, we're going to give this a try and we're going to test market this or do a demo so that we can poke holes in it. And we are invited to challenge it. And it puts it in a more comfortable situation. And in improv, we understand failure is part of the process. WD-40 is called WD-40 because there was 39 different stabs at making the formula right and perfecting it. They had 39 failed attempts. Now, thank goodness they didn't give up on trial number 37 or 38 when they were so close, but it wasn't until the 40th attempt that they got to WD-40. So failure is a part of the learning process, right? If you don't fail, I say you're not trying. We all fail, and we all have to remember that. And when somebody on our team fails, we have to remind them it's okay. We're growing, and as long as we learn from it, It's all right. Follow the fear, right? Because people are afraid to fail sometimes, you have to remind them that risks are encouraged. And you also have to remind them that when you step out of your comfort zone, that's truly when amazing things happen. It's when you grow and it's when you change. But stepping out of your comfort zone and trying something new is hard. And so we encourage all of our ensembles to follow the fear. And when you feel like it's the worst and you're never going to get through it, you usually can and you will. And either it's going to be a great success or you're going to learn something great from it. Another tenet is to listen louder. When you're on stage, you have to listen to understand where the character in the scene is going. And in business, you have to listen to understand and not interrupt. A lot of times in business and in general conversations with friends and family, we are not listening to understand. We are listening for a break in the conversation so that we can, say our point of view. We're not really trying to have a sincere exchange of ideas. And you can see what's going on in our country right now, right? People are very interested in posting something on Facebook about how they feel, but the minute somebody responds, these fights are erupting. There's very few civil discussions about it where exchanges of ideas are welcome. And we're listening to truly understand each other and not come into it with a defensive, frustrated attitude. And you have to listen without judgment in order to do that. And that's very difficult, but it can be learned. And when you're aware of it and you stop spinning when you're having a conversation and just really listen and absorb and try to understand what's being said to you, that's when you can really make a connection in your communication. And lastly, but probably one of the most important tenets of improvisation is the whole theory of yes and. And Tina Fey says start with yes and see where it takes you. And I told you about where some of the yeses in my life have taken me in my career. And yes and has that level of thinking, but it has a more direct application in improv. And that's to embrace and engage any suggestion that comes our way. So when someone in the audience yells, I want to see you guys do a scene about a proctologist, and the actors have heard it about 4 million times. They don't roll their eyes, and they don't get aggravated. They smile, and they get smart. And they do the scene about the meeting after the examination in the proctologist's office. And they make it about, I want a refund for my bill of my last exam. Which throws the audience because they were expecting something different, right? So you embrace or engage anything that comes your way. You can never say no to a suggestion or no to your partner. So if your partner says, hey, would you like to go out to lunch? You can't say no. You have to say, I would love to go to lunch, and I know this place where we could make our own lunch while we're there. And you have to build off another idea. It's also the premise of affirming and acknowledging people when they talk to you. So when somebody says something to you, good or bad, you affirm them. I hear you, and I understand what you're saying, and here's how I feel about it. You don't just disregard them. So I call this the 1, 2, 3s of yes and, right? Building off a single idea and taking something from nothing. Wikipedia is a great example. The world has created Wikipedia and information for nothing more than to share, right? We've created a great resource by sharing and adding to it one thing at a time. And Wikipedia really started with nothing but a concept that people were willing to build off of. So those are the tenets of 1, 2, 3 of yes and. In yes and, a lot of people sometimes think, well, in life, you can't say yes to everything. Like, can I have a raise? I can't just be a boss that says yes to everything. This does not make sense. But what you can do is talk to your employee and say, yes, I understand that you're asking me for more money because you feel like you're worth it and you feel like you've committed a lot to the organization, and I appreciate the work that you do. I am under a budget that I have to adhere to, and I am willing to go and figure out if there's a way that you can save us some money, that I would love to give you a piece of that and an incentive. Or if you can bring in more business, I'd love to give you a commission, or, and you keep going on. You can also say, yes, I understand you want more money, and yes, I believe you deserve more money, and I'm in a situation that I can't do it this year. Next year's budget, I hope to be able to do it, and I hope to be able to think about you in this situation, and maybe you can accept more responsibility so I can increase your salary because you are a good contributor to the organization. You can go in whatever way you want. However, the number one thing you have to do is affirm and acknowledge that person first. You could also say, yes, you do want more money, and I hear you and I understand, and I think you haven't pulled your weight, and I think this. So it doesn't mean you have to say yes and give in, but you have to acknowledge that they have asked you for it. You can't just say, let me get back to it, and ignore them, right? We have to keep the conversation going. One of the theories in these conversations is to bring a brick, not a cathedral. You don't have to come in with all the answers. You need to talk and offer and listen and affirm and acknowledge, and then wait for the next person to add to it. So it's another concept of building off of a single idea. I like to say that dialogues are way more interesting than monologues, and people don't want to just be talked at. They want to be engaged in conversation. Another concept that you need to think about when you're having these conversations is that all ideas are good ideas, and a bad idea can spark a crazy idea. And you need to remember that shutting down ideas leads to no new ideas. It is probably the biggest culture killer in business, is shutting down ideas, because people get scared, and after a couple times of being shut down, they walk away and they say, hey, you know what, you've got all the answers, you figure it out. You really don't want to hear from me. You're just trying to make yourself look good. So we want to make sure that when we ask for ideas, we don't shut them down. And I promise you, you don't need to say anything. Just say, hey, I am interested in some ideas for problem X, and I'd love to hear them. And if somebody says some outrageous idea, well, that's very interesting. I like part A of this idea, and you find something good about it. Can we find more examples of ideas like this and solutions like this that might give us A, right? You don't have to take the whole idea. You can find one good thing about it to say, I like this about it. What other ideas do we have? And move on. The good ideas will flow to the top. We don't need to make anybody feel bad. So you can use a yes and for answering tough questions, right? Listen, acknowledge, and affirm, and use empathy when you yes and. And you don't want to fall into the trap of saying, yeah, but. That's not yes and. Yeah, but is no in a tuxedo, is what they say in comedy. You know, when you say, oh, yeah, I like your idea, but, we know you really don't. Yeah, but is not an option. And you also want to be sure that you're answering without thinly disguised contempt, right? We can hear all of those subtle cues underneath. So I think we are running out of time, so I am going to skip to asking if there's any questions or any feedback at this time.
And I can go ahead and monitor those, so just go ahead and enter them into the questions panel there. And if we don't have any, Diana, you know, you can pick up and close us out if you want.
Okay. You know, the reason I started doing this was I thought that the most important thing any leader can give to an employee is the inspiration and the opportunity to contribute to the organization in a meaningful way. And I think that people's passion is driven by them thinking they can make a difference and they can be a part of something greater than themselves. And I think we as leaders have to remember we have to not only supply the opportunity but the support. And I think that you'll be surprised when you open the door to inviting it into your workplace.
Any questions at all? Oh, here we go. Something come in here. It's not a question, but it's definitely still worth reading. It's definitely a home run today. Thanks, TicketForce and Diana Martinez.
Oh, thank you.
I'll tell you, you guys, we had so much fun with Diana and our staff. What was that? Maybe about a few weeks ago. That was just so much. We had such a great time.
It's fun when we can do our interactive because we use exercises to illustrate all of the things, and it's a little bit tricky to do this without being interactive, but it was great fun, and I thank you all so much for listening.
Actually, speaking of that, we did have a question come through that's actually, do you have any ideas of exercises to help with creativity?
You know, you will be surprised at how creative the most uncreative person you think is in your office. You could do something as simple as, I want suggestions for the next holiday card from everybody, or I want suggestions for a new jingle. You're going to be surprised at who in your company could write a jingle, who might be able to sing the jingle and then collaborate on it. Somebody might be able to play it. And you can do different exercises as well, you know, that help people to expand their creativity with playing games. Anything that is game-based and generated. You could play word games. You could play, and there's tons on the internet that you can look up. But I love challenges that have to do with the company. You could do a talent show that's even just an hour long. You could do a poetry contest for a blog at your company. You could do a photo contest. Anything where people can step away from the desk and the problems, right? Or we're going to have a poster contest for how to get people more engaged in social media, or a caption contest where we let our brains think differently. And anything where we can let our brains think with humor is even better. I think humor in the workplace is mandatory. It really helps to build trust, and as long as the humor is clean and it's not pointed at anybody, you can point it at yourself, but you can't point it at anybody else. You're always going to be safe. And if you could do a fun caption contest or a holiday card contest, I did that at Second City, and we used to get amazing people in the office who came up with great ideas for a holiday card. So that help brand the company. So things like that are fun exercises.
Oh my goodness. An ad came
What?
up on my computer. I did have one more come in. It's more personal, I guess, but if you were not doing what you're doing right now, what do you think you would be doing?
If I were not doing what I would love to be a journalist. I would love to interview. I love people, and I love interviewing people. So I think I would have been a social journalist on a social level. I don't think I would want to get involved in crime kind of things, but social issues, political issues. I would love to interview people and be a talk show host kind of a thing.
Ooh, a talk show host. That would be fun.
It would be. That's my dream job. I
Yeah.
get to dream a little.
What would you say would be a good example in your life of embracing failure, essentially?
Embracing failure. Okay, here's a um, I was doing a show, Nonsense. The touring company, Nonsense, was coming through, and the ticket sales were slow. And Wicked in Chicago was just in town, and they had a dress up as a witch day, and the media was there, and everybody was there, and it was a huge event for Wicked. And I was like, I know what we're going to do. We're going to have Nun Day, and we're going to invite people to dress up like a nun, and we're going to do the same thing and copy the promotion. And it was the worst ever. Like, no one showed up. I think one or two people showed up. My poor box office manager was dressed up like a nun. And we laughed about it. That's what we did. We laughed about that situation. Um, and we never did it again. And I never, like when I had cats, I didn't ask my staff to dress up like cats. And I learned from it. And I learned that, you have to know who you are and where and what your product is. And heck, I've had all kinds of failures in my career. Um, and sometimes more public than others. Um, when I was at Second City, the owner's son came to join the company, and I realized that the writing was on the wall, that he was going to be the next president of the company, and I got it. And at first I felt like, oh my gosh, I'm a failure, and then I was like, you know what? Oh my gosh, nobody can take away all I've learned from that amazing experience and the wonderful people I've worked with. And I started doing my own thing. And I got to talk to you today. And it's been an amazing, life-changing experience, and I love it. Anything else? Hello?
Oh my goodness, I pressed the button on the headsets. It's this big joke here in the office. I didn't know this button existed, and I accidentally pressed it. Anyways, I am here. Hello. No, we
Okay.
don't have anything else coming in. Diana, thanks again so much for joining us today and just going through everything. I know it was really beneficial for even me, and I've already spent the day with you before, so I had a great time. I hope you had a wonderful time. But again, thank you for joining
I
us
sure
here at
did.
TF Live.
Thank you so much. Everybody have a great day.
We'll talk to everybody soon and join us tomorrow at 10, I believe it's 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time for the product update, and that will be with me and Lynn Keek-Smith, our CEO. I hope you guys are enjoying TF Live, and again, please join us tomorrow for our final session. Thanks.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.